All right, folks, it is the Lex Lumpkin Show, Week 17, Championship Week. It's been a long season. I think that this is a result, these two championship teams that we were somewhat expecting. These were two of the four teams that we knew would always be in it no matter what. So we got an exciting one there. We also got some things to talk about, but as always, we're starting with a word from our sponsors, Sundog Multimedia. Sundog is an online communications social media company. But what started as a personal tool has since evolved into something much bigger, allowing users to communicate, research, and discover things that impact their lives and daily decisions. Sundog will collaborate with you to help build and execute a modern yet nimble social media strategy by utilizing innovative and traditional media principles. Sundog is also a proud supporter of the Stop Soldier Suicide Foundation. You can follow Sundog on Instagram at Sundog_multimedia. That's Instagram at Sundog_multimedia. Brains Brawn, a true professionalism. That's easy peasy moving and service. Muscle for hire, moving, assembly, errands, you name it. They will do it. Easy peasy is a multi-purpose team. Need something? Just ask. All right, so we're going to get into the championship breakdown, but quickly, I just wanted to touch on something. It's been a bit of a hot button issue for the past week or so. Some teams, they've been talking about the trade deadline and kind of how we structure things with the league schedule. One thing I'm going to say is, at least from my point of view, I don't think the trade deadline is going anywhere. I think that there's value in the trade deadline. One, we always talk about the economics of the league and kind of creating an economy. And, people are saying that, hey, maybe year-round trading would promote more activity, things like that. That's not true. That just goes against basic economics. We're talking economics, econ 101. It's not how it works. There's a reason that, the McRib and the Shamrock Shake and, limited time items like that are limited time. It's because you need to create this demand for something by letting people know that it's not going to be around forever, right? I mean, if you had sunny days, 90-degree weather every day, eventually you'd get tired of the heat. You'd be looking to move into some cold weather, stuff like that. So this idea that having year-round trading actually promotes it, yes, maybe we'll have more total trades, but when we're talking about some type of percentage or something and overall activity, it's just not even true. Okay, we might have that might result in one January trade, something like that. This idea of having teams that are not in the playoffs being allowed to trade while playoff teams aren't, that's just like that goes against everything in the league, right? That creates an unlevel playing field. It's punishing teams for making the playoffs. The point of this league, the point of fantasy sports is to win. I know that some people in this league think that the whole point is to make trades and try and rebuild and acquire draft picks and not win games. That's not how it goes. Okay, I think when it comes to the trade deadline, there is value in saying, all right, teams need to decide where they are at on this season. Right. Of course, it's a dynasty and we play year to year and it's it's a never ending loop. But in that time, right, it's like a little microcosm each season. So people need to decide, okay, I'm going to go all in and I'm going to try and build a team that can make this playoff push, or I don't have what it takes to make the playoff push. I'm going to start maybe trading off some older players, trading off some win now guys, trying to get some future assets and committing to that rebuild, committing to next year, anything like that. That is kind of that's like the spirit of dynasty sports, right? I think that, people say, oh, it's all about trading and then some leagues do it, some leagues don't. Go play in those leagues then, okay? And see how well those goes, okay? So many of these people, when you go on Reddit and everything like that, there's a lot of people that are playing with people that they don't know, and these leagues don't last long at all. We're playing in a league that I think is going to have longevity. I'm talking 30, 40, 50 years from now, we're still going to be playing. I think our children are going to be inheriting these teams. So you need to have some structure. You need to have a cycle. And I think it's just a couple teams that they have no restraint and then they just want to be able to run wild and do whatever they want. But, we're not doing that. We're for sure not doing that where it's only playoff teams that can, or that non-playoff teams that can trade and punishing the playoff teams because people value players differently too. So it's like, hey, I really want to get this player, but I can't trade for him because I'm in the playoffs. So when this other team gets him, if a team's trading for a player, they clearly value him a little bit more. That's going to drive the price up because then you're at least going to have to match what that person gave up and also add more on top of that to make it worthwhile. So it's like, I just don't think that's fair that players or that teams should miss out on acquiring players because they actually won games and scored points this year and gave themselves an opportunity to win the championship. That just makes no sense to me. As far as, year-round stuff, just take a break. Take a goddamn break, okay? The trade deadline was what? early November. I think it was the start of November. Okay, so we go 2 months, the last 2 months of the season, we're not making trades. And then you take 2 more months. Okay, we go hard, hard, hard for 75% of the year playing this game. And guess what? Yeah, somebody tried to hold it against me that I said Dynasty never stops. Yeah, look at it. Okay, I can't trade right now. I'm not in the playoffs. I still acquired Gardner Minshew. I'm still looking at I'm still trying to pick up players that I think can help my team next year. And, you can still pick up guys. There's nothing stopping you from talking trade with other teams. So, an example I used was, do you think it's a coincidence when we get to the opening of the free agency period in any sport, whether it's basketball, football, baseball, and within the first 5 minutes, 20 people have deals? Right? It's like, do you think that these teams just called these guys up, gave them a number, and those guys were like, "Oh shit, that's exactly what I was looking for. You got a deal, no negotiation." No, these guys were tampering. They were doing this. You can tamper a little bit. You can talk to these teams. I don't even think talking trade is considered tampering. I think that's more about talking to guys and signing contracts when they're on another team. So that's not even tampering. You can still talk to teams and say, "Hey, as soon as this trade window opens up, let's get this deal done. Let's start putting something together now so that when that window opens up, we can get right to it. Nobody else can slide in and try and take that trade away from me." So that's kind of where I stand. And if anybody wants to come on and debate me, then feel free. It's an open forum. You know how it is. But, I think that it's a lot of, I think that people try to be maybe a little too reactionary, or I shouldn't say try. I think that people by nature are reactionary. And, a team now that's not in the playoffs wants to push for year-round trading for non-playoff teams, but they might be in the playoffs next year. And all of a sudden they might realize, wait, this is kind of fucking stupid. And we're definitely not letting, because I said, I said in the group chat, it's either all in or nobody's in. And I do not think that having people trade, playoff teams trade during the playoffs, that's bullshit. You should not be able to suddenly trade for somebody in the championship week that you didn't have in the semifinals. So that's not even something I want to touch. So, as far as the trading goes, like I said, it's an open forum. If somebody wants to come on and debate me and try and change my mind, then you can go right ahead. But I just don't see it happening. I think that it's maybe too reactionary. I think people get a little bored. I think that we need to be adults and show a little bit of restraint and just say, you know what? A little bit of time is good. Time off is good. Everything's great in moderation. That's all it has to be. Okay. Moving on to the championship, right? So we got quite a championship game here. We got two of the top ranked teams from this season. Of course, the concern going into the playoffs was that from week 6 or so on, the Vibers, they were not. So I should say it's two pins versus the Vibers. It's pins versus pins, that type of thing. But going into the playoffs, we were kind of worried about the Vibers production because they were putting up 140 points per week for the first month and a half, and then from then on they were putting up about 110. But they've really picked it up. I mean, I'm pulling up the bracket right now. I'm sorry, but I mean, of course, week 1 they put up the massive 137.9 points. They did take a step back with a 92.14 in the semifinals, but Simcoe's team, snake bitten as always. He had no quarterbacks to play. He had to start Nick Foles. Really could have used a guy like Minshew. He should have saved up his fab. But that's still a good win for the Vibers, 92 points. They're going in against two pins who beat Mikey and Josh 116.56 to 110.76. That was a very tightly contested game. That was a one where at both points it looked like the teams kind of had it on lock, and then all of a sudden you step back and say, oh shit, wait, this is going to be pretty close. So we got two teams in here with two pins in the Vibers that are very strong, always ranked top 4. Both had their time at the top in the power rankings at some point in the season. Right now, it's projected to be I don't know what we necessarily consider a blowout here, but two pins is projected to win by about 14.5 points right now, 134.5 to 120.5 ish. So it makes for an interesting one. I'm going to look through the matchups real quick. I mean, of course, you got Mahomes and you got Herbert, and that's really been the story of everything. Where I think what kind of screws, I didn't even think about this, but what kind of screws the Vibers is that, yeah, they lost Kyler Murray, but they were still able to start Derek Carr. Derek Carr has been benched. So now they don't have a quarterback. They have to start Zonovan Knight in the super flex spot. And Zonovan Knight, of course, he had those first couple of games where it was great, but he's really fallen off. I mean, he had negative rushing yards last week. He had -2 rushing yards against the Jags, who are not some stout rush defense. So that's that is not very promising going into things. And but we've seen the resurgence of Cam Akers, Leonard Fournette. He's becoming a target machine again. Juju has been having a little bit of a resurgence himself. A.J. Brown, Travis Kelce, Mike Williams. This is still a decent team, but I think that just matches up very poorly against two pins right now. Mahomes, I'm looking, let's see, how did he do against Denver the other week? Mahomes, I guess, had had somewhat of a down game, I guess, in terms of turnovers, but he still threw, he had 3 picks, but he still threw 3 touchdowns. He had 352 passing yards. Denver, they just feel like a team that's maybe dead in the water. That is a very good defense. That's kind of been what's keeping them into things, right? Because wasn't the whole thing where if the Broncos were able to just score 20 points a game this year, they'd be like 11 and whatever. They'd have double-digit wins. So that defense seems to be a little more prideful than offense when it comes to things like this. I don't think guys like going out and just getting sunned because the rest of the team sucks. So Denver might still come in and try and force these turnovers, and maybe it becomes kind of like a slow game where there's not many possessions, and that can hold Mahomes back a little bit. But I don't see it happening. I mean, the fact that he threw 3 picks, he still had 20 points. That just says everything that needs to be said about Pat Mahomes. Justin Herbert in the Superflex, of course, he's been picking it up. In terms of the Chargers, they've been picking it up, but he's not been throwing these touchdowns. Last 2 weeks he's had 0 passing touchdowns. The 2 weeks before that, he had 1 and 1. He was still able to get decent points there with 18 and 19 points. But the last 2 weeks, he scored about 14 points combined. The Rams, they did play really well against Baker last week, but the Rams defense has been a little shaky for the whole season. I could see this getting a little ugly, the battle for LA. I haven't been a huge Chargers guy. Herbert's definitely been having a little bit of a down season, but when it comes to Herbert versus Donovan Knight in the Superflex spot, you're taking Herbert all day. Tyler Lockett's coming back for after 1 week, he's coming back. He's got the finger thing. Who knows how that'll affect him in terms of actually, catching the ball. Maybe he's going to be a little bit more of a deep threat decoy, maybe trying to catch it in the basket a little bit more than maybe some short route hand catches, that type of thing. But I mean, overall, Stevenson, Sanders, Diggs, Chase, what do I got to say about this 2-Pins roster? It hasn't already been said. They're very top heavy. They're doing it without Kupp. And that's the thing, we always talked about 2-Pins' depth. They lose Cooper Kupp, one of the greatest fantasy receivers of all time, and they're right back in the championship. So I think it makes for an interesting matchup. I definitely give the advantage to 2-Pins. I'm going to name 2-Pins my official pick for the championship, and I'll leave it at that. I'm also, I'm rooting against the Vibers a little bit here. I do have their pick. I'd like to get that 1 extra draft slot back. So maybe I'm a little biased in my thing. There has been a lot of talks around the league about being a little afraid of a 2-Pins dynasty going back to back. I think it's good for the league. I think that it's good to see a dynasty this early on. I think that these are 2 worthy owners that can, build that dynasty. I think they're very humble. They put their head down. It's almost like Belichick when he won the AFC Championship and he just tossed the trophy off to the side, that type of thing. So, I think I got no problem with 2-Pins winning the going back to back here, and really cementing themselves as the first true dynasty in this dynasty league. That's all I really got to say. I mean, we got Mikey Bowen versus Simcoe in the 3rd place matchup. Winner gets their money back, that type of thing. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Simcoe's still a little bit snake bitten, wasn't able to get Hurts back for this. So, quite an underwhelming end of the season for Simcoe. But we'll leave it at that. So I want to thank Sundog Multimedia. I want to thank Easy Peasy Moving and Service. We will definitely have the champion on next week, and then we're going to do some more. We're going to get more into some off-season stuff. We're going to have another mock draft dropping as soon as the draft order is official. We're going to talk about some free agency moves, or not free agency, some trades in the off-season that'll be coming up and everything like that. But good luck to both of our teams. Good luck to anybody else in their fantasy championships and any other redraft leagues, anything like that. Once again, thank you, Sundog Multimedia. Thank you, Easy Peasy Moving and Service. This is Lex Lumpkin. We'll see you next week.